Good afternoon, and thank you all for standing by. For the duration of today's conference, all participants' lines are on a listen-only mode until the question and answer session. At that time, if you would like to ask a question, press star 1. Today's call is being recorded. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. It is my pleasure to introduce Kaneen Reese. Thank you. You may begin.
Thank you, Holly, and thank you all for joining us. We have received a lot of responses for this Q&A session, and we really appreciate your interest. You've had a few months since the release of the 2017 prelim data for the economic census and also the one-year ACS data. So we're really excited to be able to kind of gather your questions together and be able to give you answers in a more public forum and not just the emails that we send back or the answers that we give you at conferences. So with that, we've put together close to 30 of the questions that have been asked. A lot of them have been repeats. So we're trying to hit the big ones that, that we've gotten. And so we'll go through that, and then at the end we'll have some time to take a few telephone calls if people didn't have a chance to email the questions in. There's also a chat, so if you would send any questions that you have to all panelists, we'll do our best to get those questions answered, and if not, we'll be able to circle back with you at a later time. So with that, I wanted to start with the first question that we get. Is asking the differences and why we can't use the single search and the advanced search together. So I'm going to quickly show you on the site the two things. So there's the single search and then there's the advanced search. Single search is an open text, and the advanced search is right here where you see more of a faceted filter or those drop-down experiences. So from here, and the question really is the connection between the two. So I wanted to show you an example if you were to put in maybe a topic, but mostly a lot of when we hear this response, it's from people who've put maybe a table ID in. So I'm going to put S1701. I'm going to put San Antonio. Oops, I didn't. I missed the space, so there we go. So I'm going to pull up the table. As you see, it's for San Antonio right here. Now, what I can do is I can go in and add geographies. This is a very typical thing that we hear from people saying where they really are seeing this disconnect between the single search and the advanced search. So I can add in a state. If I were just to add maybe Texas, just for an example. Now, one thing to notice, if you scroll down here, you see the selected filters. That's kind of your drop box so that you know what filters have been added. There is not an apply button. We know that that's something that people would like to see, but instead of that, just go ahead and hide it so you know how to use the functionality. So the Texas has been added as well as San Antonio. What happens is that you go back up here to the single search bar, and if you were to then go, you know, I really want to see that with S1901, it deletes everything and it goes back to to United States. And that is because they are completely two separate systems, our single search and our advanced search, which is that faceted filter. We do have plans of uniting them, but we're not there yet. So one of the things that you can do is especially if you're using a table ID, so that means you're very prescriptive about it. You know exactly what table you'd like, and you go in and add a filter right here and do exactly what we did before. So I added in Texas. I'll put that in. So let me actually refresh that a little bit. The selection. I think I confused myself. So let's go ahead and put in S1901. And it brings that up. And then I'm going to go to the filter. And I'm going to choose the geography. And I'm going to choose another county around Texas. I'm going to choose just to be quick about it. And you can see what's been added. And then you do the add over here. And you can see that Andrews has been added. And up here, if I'm interested, and we hear this when people have put in maybe 6 or 7 geographies, and then they want to change their table ID. One thing that you can do and keep your table ID is you can go up here where it says the Q equals. You can go back in, and I want to try S1701. So from here, I go to S1701, and I bring in United States, and it should have kept my geography, but that's a way for you to quickly go back and forth. So we do know it's something that's not available right now, but we are working, and hopefully by adjusting the URL, you'll be able to go through it a little bit easier that way. The next question we have, let me go back to the and if somebody wants to mute their phones, I think I'm hearing a lot of feedback. So this is showing you just the differences between it. The next question here is, what are the topics, why are the topics different from AFF? And that is because we are working on a unification of the Census.gov, all of its content. Census.gov had its own hierarchy and its own topics and drop-downs. And so did AFF. So if you look on the right-hand side, you see the AFF topics and what was available. But AFF only had a section of the surveys and programs that were available. It wasn't the entire content like Census.gov does have. And so we really needed to create a whole new hierarchy that not only got the very, very specific detailed information that AFF provided, but that also allowed for the really high-level things that Census.gov had. So I really encourage you to go through, especially if you know those topics from AFF, go through and check and see where they're different so that you're available. So here's one of the things. So under topics, and then we have that topic and the topic called employment. Before in AFF, you had people, and under people was then employment and then commuting. Another one is health. We have a topic called health, and that's where health insurance lives as well as disability. So there definitely are some differences that you'll just need to be really mindful of. All right, and here's the example of showing back there was on the left-hand side is data.census.gov, and on the right-hand side is AFF. And then underneath that, this is census.gov. So you see that it's under employment, and we're now trying to be more unified. All right, so one of the other questions we get is quite a bit are what data are available on data.census.gov. So from here, here's our grid where we try to keep that updated as the releases are happening, as well as that migrated data that's coming from American FactFinder over. And I can show you where to find that. Not only is it in our release notes, but that it's also available if you were to go to census.gov, you can go to ask.census.gov. And on your left-hand side, on the panel, there's a drop-down for data.census.gov. And under, I believe it's how to use the site, or, no, I'm sorry, it's the one that says data available. The one that's data available, what data are available, and this is what we keep updated. So it gives you an idea what's available. We definitely don't want you to be upset because you can't find something and then you really find out that it's just not there yet. So please take a minute if you can't find something to check and see what isn't available. You know, we're still in that process of migrating things over from American FactFinder, so that'll be still going on for a little bit. And so things like this are very important to kind of know where you are. All right, let me go back in here. And pseudo-geographies have already been added. Now, a pseudo-geography is very census statement. Really, it says collections of geographies. So things like all counties in a state, those are what we would call a pseudo-geography. It just allows you to have a one-click access to the data. So instead of having to go in and individually click on all the counties in California, you can just click one that's at the top. So here's some of those things that are found in data.census.gov right now. So we have all states in the United States. So we have all counties within, all places within the United States, as well as those all states. All congressional districts for the 111th through the 116th, and then congressional districts within states, so that you could do that one click for all of the congressional districts in the United States, as well as just all within a state. Then we have the American Indian, our AIAN population, where you can click one for that. And then for the United States, and as well as by state, we have ZICTAs for the U.S. We have, and we're working on the partially available within a state. We have the state legislatures, the upper and lower, county subdivisions, those urban areas within the United States, metro, micro within the United States and within states. That's summary level 110 for the U.S. And then all tracts within a state and county, all school districts, and elementary, secondary, and unified within a state, block groups within counties and tracts, and then combined statistical areas within the United States. And then finally, we have our PUMAs within the United States and within states. Another question we get, well, how to access the pseudo-geographies. Where else can you access them? So one of the things that you can do is to go to to access them through our API, which is our application programming interface. That's the basis of how we pull our data. And I'm just going to quickly go through, because it can be quite complicated, but we have a lot of slides that can show you. If you go to the developers page at census.gov/developers, go to the available APIs, and under that we've chosen the 1 year for the American Community Survey. And then from there we did 2018. And then you can choose examples and supported geography. From here, at the top box, you could either go to geographies and individually select the geographies, or you can go to variables and individually select what table and estimate that would be. But under the example, it gives you the data profile for social characteristics, and that you would get that for, and we've chosen the county subdivision. Or excuse me, no, the state. Understate the congressional district. So this is kind of the way you can walk through. You then put it in the URL, and you can manipulate the URL between a star, which is kind of all, and you can replace that with the actual state, which is, here we've chosen 06, which is California. And this is the JSON that's returned. You could then save it. We saved it as all CDs in California as a CSV. And then from there, you can go in and save it as, open it up as an Excel. All right, so now that was, there's a lot of information, but at least to be able to walk through, because those pseudo-geographies are some things that we don't have all of them yet, so we want to show you that there's different places and areas that you can get them. All right, so some of the questions we get are download, export, and copy. So one of the questions was about being able to, so when would you download versus export or copy? How would that look? And why the flat file, the CSV, has exclamation points and question marks and that type of thing. So wanted to show you on our table that we were at. Oops, the wrong one. The table we were at. If we go back to here. So two things. One, you can go right here to this download, and then you can choose one table, or you can even choose multiple if you wanted to. Then go to download selected. And then go from here, you can download. And what this is going to be is that this is going to be a CSV file. I'm not sure why it says the download's not working. But I can pull up something else to show you. That's why we have the slide decks working. From there, you can also export something. If you were to get on a cell and you go to export table, export to Excel. Over here, you can open it up. And this doesn't give you exactly what maybe you were looking for at the same, but it gives you something. We're still in the process of working on our downloads and trying to get those download features and the print features that you need. But this is one way of being able to do it in a form that kind of looks very similar to the table. And those are some things that are different, whether you need it, when you need it, and when you wouldn't need it. So if we go back to the slide deck, so at the top you'll see what wouldn't work for me was the download from the site. And that takes you to a CSV file, which is a flat file. So with every geography is on one line. This is a great file if you want to go in and have it computer read, or if you want to manipulate the data. But that's not necessarily what you would want if you want to see maybe a picture of what the table looks like. So just know that that's there. Why you're pulling it in from the API, unformatted, and that's where you don't get necessarily the commas. You get maybe the exclamation points instead. Underneath, it's exporting directly from the table display, and that's when you get it more kind of more appropriate, I guess, for how you'd like to view it. And then if you copy and paste, you can go through and kind of cut and paste some sections and then plop it into an Excel. So here's some things for best using the download when you want to manipulate the table. Limitations is that it doesn't necessarily resemble the table view on the screen. The export, you kind of export the table. One of the nice things is that it does keep, if you've manipulated the table, maybe hidden some columns or taken some things out or moved some things around within the table displayed and customized it, it will keep that customization. And then the copy is nice if you just want a section of the estimates and put it in and maybe then use it for calculations or something like that. So we kind of covered this one. This is from the download, export, and copy. Which of these will keep customizations? And like I said, the one that comes out as a CSV file is the flat file. That will always go back to the original format of how the table was designed and released by the Census Bureau. But if you export, if you manipulate, customize the table and put it to how you'd like to see it and then export it, that will, excuse me, that will keep the, your customizations. So future plans for improving these features, we really would like to work, and we've been starting to do some research on using a software that would allow for not just download but also a print feature. So kind of having it, instead of it being disjointed where you would go to one place for something and the other is these kind of Band-Aids that we're showing you right now are, we'd like to have a feature that's kind of ingrained into our system that we could use. Not positive when that will happen. We would hope in the next several months that we would have that, but we will keep you updated. We try to have these, our normal webinars every couple of months, so we'll make sure that we keep you updated on that. Okay, and so this is kind of what we talked about too, is that the customizations that'll carry over, it won't for the download, the export it will. So why is a sort order incorrect in some of the downloaded tables? So this is a question we get a lot about. This was based on a technical change that we had to do to for our API, and it lost the functionality of that prescribed sort order that we had before. We are looking into all the different ways that we could kind of force a sort order, but most concerned with performance and how that would affect performance. So please be aware that when you do download the tables, they will not come back in that same, starting at 1 or even alphabetical, to be aware of that, and we are looking into it. So here's the next question is, I need a PDF of a table to print and share. What can I do? So one of the things that we have recently released is we've worked with being able to kind of customize the Control P option to print a PDF. So let me show you really quickly on that table I've been working with. From here, if you were to close the download if that matters, Control P, and from here it's pulling up a print version of the table. Now it's not going to be perfect because a lot of our tables at the Census Bureau are very, very long. They are also very, very wide with lots of columns. But it does get you a little bit closer to what you had before, what maybe you were most interested in and wanted to see on your table display. So if you see this, that at least it includes something official from the the U.S. Census Bureau. It also gives you your table title. Here are all your table notes, and then it gives you the table itself down here. So love to hear your feedback when you start using that and see if that seems to be kind of hitting closer to the mark of what people needed in a print feature. All right. So the next question is, Chrome is the preferred browser. What happens if I use a different browser? So that's correct. We do suggest and recommend that you use Chrome. All different browsers, or all the different browsers, do behave differently. We have, based on our own testing, we've found that Chrome gives the best results. We also have the most users on using Chrome, and so that's definitely where we're focusing our efforts on. So definitely suggest that you check out, do things within Chrome. The next question is, what should I do if it doesn't work in Chrome? And one of the suggestions is to go ahead and try to clear your cache. We are a developing site, as you're aware, and we're trying to push out features or updates or index changes regularly without disrupting users' performance. But one of the things that sometimes does happen is that we have caching issues. So a good kind of rule of thumb is to work on is to just clear your cache. If it's not working, if something's not coming up, go ahead and clear your cache. Here's some in the directions in case people aren't aware, is to within Chrome. You will have access to these slides afterwards, so I don't want to take all the time to go through all of these things, but you will have those being accessible to you. All right, I'm going to go to the next one. So what should I do if I run into intermittent responses? So we've definitely had issues with intermittent responses in the past. We've worked very hard to make sure that our hardware is increased, and any efficiencies that we can do on our side have been updated. Definitely on your end, you should, it's kind of the same thing you do with other sites that might not be working. Maybe you shut down your browser, you clear your cache, make sure you're in Chrome, those kinds of things. But the latest fixes, they should be corrected. So if they're not, and if you're still seeing issues, please send us the steps that you took and maybe some screenshots, and that would really help us pinpoint the issues that you're seeing. And then you can send it to our feedback at feedback@census.gov. So the next one is, why did we decide to switch from AFF to data.census.gov when we didn't have all the major functionality built into it yet? So this is an extremely common question. I understand that AFF is finished and it's final and you're used to using it. You know that it's always going to be available as far as when you go in and look for your data, and this is a new site that's still developing, and sometimes you can't find something or you have to look at some tutorials or some references. So I understand it's very frustrating. But one of the things, or the main thing I think, reason why the Census Bureau is switching is because we've decided that we wanted to have more flexibility with our data. So using the Census API, we do have that flexibility. Not only are you allowed to or have the capabilities of having whole tables, but you can have single estimates. These single estimates can drive dashboards, they can drive other applications, and they also drive our site at data.census.gov. So that's kind of the main reason why we wanted to do that. We want to take that functionality from the API, and this is things that are available, excuse me, through our site, but that we also allow other people, third parties, can come in and create their own dashboards and their own data visualizations and all those things that people like to do right now, and to make data easy to use and more fun to use. That's why we've moved away from things like PDFs or even with AFF. You know, AFF was a great dissemination system, but it's been close to 10 years. Those servers, the software, the hardware, all of that's getting old and outdated, and it was time to do a switch, and we decided that holistically we wanted to move away from things like single tools. You know, an AFF was just a tool that sat on census.gov, so things weren't searchable. People couldn't find estimates that maybe they were looking for a commuting number, but all they got were commuting PDFs and different types of methodology reports about commuting and the surveys. And all of that goes back to, AFF it was static tables. And with the API, we want all of that different versatility and that flexibility to do all the things we want to do with data internally, but also externally, what y'all want to do with data. So that was the decision. I know it's a tough one, especially since most people, or many people at least, use the data for their day-to-day jobs. So I really encourage you, if you do have questions, please let us know. Please send emails at our feedback. We will get you the answers, help you through, and if necessary, send you the data if we need to. We just want to make sure that you get what you need, and thank you, and we appreciate you for kind of bearing with us. Okay, so speaking of American FactFinder, it is scheduled to be taken offline in March 2020. So we've already retired it. It was retired in September when we stopped putting new data in, and we started putting, actually back in, but you started seeing the differences in with AFF no longer releasing new data. So that was back in the summer, and we expect to decommission and take it offline in March of 2020. So what happens if the functionality isn't available by then, or the data? So first point is that the data. So we will make sure that you have access to the data, whether it be through data.census.gov or the API, or FTP, something. You will have access to the data before it is decommissioned in March. You won't be losing that functionality. As far as individual features that may have had, we have lots of different things like geolocators that may not be the same as within AFF like it was, but different ways of accessing the data. So things that are missing, we will definitely let you know beforehand, and where those other avenues are. So will early American Community Survey data available in AFF be moved to data.census.gov before it is taken offline? So part of that is a little bit of what we just talked about. We won't leave you without data when AFF is taken offline. But some of the data have actually been migrated, and they're just available maybe in the API. So based on limited resources from the Census Bureau and our data providers, with all of the changes and leading up to 2020, we decided the data prior to 2010 to only make available in the Census Data API and not in data.census.gov. But we understand that some people still would like to have that functionality. Please send us messages and feedback, and we can forward them on to the data providers if that's the case. But just want to make you aware that the data are available. You would just have to find them in a different way. So the next question is, will older data found through the FTP site but not in AFF be available on data.census.gov? So I can't tell you definitively, because that's based on the resources of all the different surveys and programs. My thought would probably be not, because they would have to all be redelivered to our Census Data API. We are going forward with using the API kind of as our basis of data releases at the Census Bureau. So all of that, and there's a lot of big learning curve to understand where we are. And from people, we definitely have smaller surveys that just release data maybe through table packages or FTP sites, maybe just online. And it's a big change to then have something released through the API. You have to make sure that you have the understanding of the data deliveries and the metadata deliveries, and that's all at different levels and different understandings throughout these surveys and programs. So I'm not saying absolutely not, but I'm gathering that probably not. And as I understand, there is no thought to taking down the FTP site. Those data would still be available. It's just my thought, and I haven't heard anything different, would be that going forward we would be with the API, but we will definitely keep you updated on that. So we have talked a lot about the Census Data API, and maybe this should have been a little earlier, but what is the Census API? Kind of what we've been gathering at is it is the basis of everything that we do. It's our underlying source that feeds data.census.gov. It also feeds those third-party people who go in and create dashboards for their state data centers, people who create online tools or mobile tools that can be used with individual estimates and those data visualizations. But basically, it's just a service that provides data to applications and it's meant to disseminate raw, unformatted data, and from there people can then go in and add the formatting and the metadata and all those things that are necessary to pull and to create their graphs or their maps or all the other things that can be pulled from individual data, as well as kind of pulling together as tables. So with how it is related to data.census.gov, again, it's the source of what we're doing. We are ingesting our API data, and then we're disseminating it on data.census.gov. So we're pulling the same way that a third party would be pulling it. If the data API goes down, the estimates on data.census.gov won't come up. So that's kind of the basis of everything. So are there any plans to create a tool that accesses the data without needing to query the API? So right now, there is not. So we've talked about how the census data would be disseminated in two ways, through the data API and then also through data.census.gov. So everything would be put into the API, with the majority of the data being viewed on data.census.gov. But no, there aren't any plans to create something that would release data as maybe, reading data files or something like that. It would all be queried from the API. So the next question is, if you don't want tabulated data tables like those found in data.census.gov, what are my other options? So you've got a few things. One would be from the PUMS. The PUMS data is available on different websites within Census.gov. I'm pulling the one from the ACS on the far right, on the as well as the left. And this allows you, the PUMS file is a sample of our of the indivial responses that come out. So it's a 1% sample, and from there you can pull. From there you can then tabulate and decide if you don't like how our tabulations were created, then you can use the PUMS data to create your own. One of the easier ways to do it is to pull the PUMS files, but you can pull it through our microdata access. We have a replacement tool for Data Ferret that's now available. It is a beta, so we're still working on doing some updates. It would probably be a good idea to have our step-by-step instructions that we've added to the bottom of the page that you can pull up and help you. But it does, it's very similar to the functionality of Data Ferret. We hope that the interface is a little bit more user-friendly. But again, we're still working on it, but please take a look, and we'd love to hear your comments and feedback about it. So another common question we get is, why can't I find the scroll bar? So let me show you where that's in the table display. Go back to the table display. So sometimes I know that you can't really see it in other browsers. Chrome, you can see it best in, but these are the scroll bars right here on the far right and also at the bottom. Sometimes if they don't pop up right away, I haven't seen that happen lately, but if you scroll all the way to the bottom of the table, you'll be able to see it and pull it from there. We think that we have that fixed. If you're still having that problem, please send us an email and let us know. That's also kind of the same thing with the filter panel. We talked about how you can add all of these things, but when you scroll down and you go to apply, there is an apply button. it's automatically applied, so you can hide it and just kind of get out of that, but that it's already been applied. But I know that people feel more comfortable when they've clicked on a button that says that your basket has been applied. Okay, and here's the picture that we had. The next one is, how do I access data by race, Hispanic origin, ancestry, or country of birth? So we have a couple of different things that I can show you. Just for ease, I'll show you. The main thing is being able to find it. We talked about those topics and how we've changed the topics. Now in AFF, in order to get basic race, you went under, in the distribution of race, one of the main race categories within maybe a geography, you would go to basic race and then, or the race and ethnicity, and then you would be able to find your table. But here, and if you wanted to look at something that was more of an iteration or the population of something, so the Vietnamese population and the characteristics of the Vietnamese population, from maybe something from our SPPs or our selected population profiles. Now you can find them all in one area. So here's an example. We went to the topics, went to race and ethnicity, and then went to Asian, and then Asian. And that will take you to like a BO2 table to give you a distribution. Now you can go a little further, and instead of going to Asian, or stopping at Asian, you can go to detailed Asian alone, and then go to Japanese alone, and that will give you those iterations like SO201 from ACS. Now, also for the Hispanic or Latino, the same thing. Also, sorry, I didn't mean to go so fast. And then also under ancestry, if you were looking for Romanian, ancestry is now under population and people. It's not the same as in AFF where all of those iterations were all nested under detailed race and ethnicity. We had a lot of feedback about people who couldn't necessarily find that. So we wanted to put it all in one place. And based on our user feedback is whether people are really getting it or understanding it, being able to find it is how we'll kind of evaluate whether this is working or not. So for country of birth, under population and people, you'd go to native and foreign born, select foreign born, and then you can choose your area. So Asian, Eastern Asia, and you can do China. So when will data from the 2020 census be available through data.census.gov? With the 2020 census coming up really knocking at our door, and then we also have, we're having a lot of, obviously a big employment drive we need workers for 2020 census. We have a lot of questions about that, and that was a significant amount of questions that came through to our site. So we are only talking about data.census.gov. And for 2020, I don't have a specific date, but it'll definitely be 2021 after those numbers have been gathered and then tabulated. So the next question is, some tables return a generic data not available message. Question is, how can I tell if the data is not publicly available or just not available through data.census.gov? So that's a really great question. So there's two things. So sometimes it says data not available, and maybe it's because when it went to pull the API, there was some sort of a glitch or a failure, and sometimes if you press refresh, the data will then come up. But then there's also that the data may have been filtered out. ACS data based on, data quality concerns or even confidentiality concerns. Most of our, or all of our surveys have different methodology behind what's being released and what's not. So, for example, with filtering issues, it may come back as data unavailable as well. So you're right. It's hard to know when it's available and when it's not. We are working on improving our messaging, and we hope to have that in the next couple of months. All right, the next question is, how can I do an address lookup? ASS had an address lookup, but we also have a census geocoder address lookup. At the bottom, it shows you geocoding.geo.census.gov/geocoder as a way to get to it, and from here you fill out the information. Here's your step-by-step with some tips on how to access that address lookup, finding out maybe what block and the census tract that you need. All right. Can my ASF URL redirect me to a data.census.gov URL? So we're working on this right now. We're working on this, but we're not there yet. We're working on maybe having some mapping for that. I would suggest we'll let you know when it is available. But as you're going through data.census.gov and you're finding your new tables from your old tables, it's definitely just a good practice to go ahead and update it as you go. And hopefully we'll have that updated mapping soon. All right. The last question is, where can I find a geographic comparison table, a GCT, in data.census.gov? So American Community Survey, ACS, has discontinued their use of the GCTs. Basically what a GCT is, if you're not familiar, is it's taking one estimate and then viewing that one estimate across a geography. So a great example is counties. So in this example, we have the population, all counties within in Indiana. And so what this is we've mapped it. So you see it in the map. If you go to the Customize map, and then on the far left, it says View Table. That will then give you a table of those counties with the estimates. And you know, we know we need to probably make this in a way that could maybe be printed or in a different format, but at least it gives you those things. And it's a lot. One of the reasons why ACS decided to move away from the static GCTs was because of the flexibility that the API allows. It's not just, I think ACS had about 80 estimates that were available on American FactFinder through this GCT. But with this, in that drop down, it's all the estimates in a table is available for you to be able to view within the different collections of geographies. All right. And then the final question that we got was kind of a amalgamation of a lot of where can I find trainings, where can I find resources using data.census.gov as well as the microdata access. We have a resource page, and I'll show you how to find it. We also have release notes and FAQs. I also showed you where that ask.census.gov is, and on the left-hand side there's a drop-down for data.census.gov. So let me show you an easy way to access our resource page. So if you just go to census.gov, now here where it says Explore Data, over here it says Explore Data Main. If you click on this, on the left-hand side there's 3 boxes. It says what is data.census.gov, and if you go to this is our resource page. So not only does it ask you for feedback and give us, but it also gives you kind of an entry point to the FAQs, what data are available, how is data.census.gov built. So if you click on this, it will take you to that ask.census.gov page and give you some basic information. And if you'd like more, you can get right there. Also on this page are our tutorials. Here are our data gems, which are short 3 to 4 to 5 minutes tutorials. And we've done several on data.census.gov, and we're populating it more with different things. There's also information about the API and other ways of disseminating your data. So it's a good, quick kind of answers and response from there. And then here are our PDFs that we've added. We're trying to put as many as we can together. So things like how to export a table. We've tried to put together some quick snapshots that you could access and then go down and view the tables and find out how to do that. You could also, there's some tips and tricks, how to find grocery stores, how to gather and export data. Here's one for the Census Data API. I showed you a little bit of it, but here's more direct walkthrough on how you would go down, even all the way to how you would format your table to kind of get the extraneous out. And then the last thing I wanted to show you is here, this microdata analysis system. So the microdata analysis is at data.census.gov/MDAT. And then here is a walkthrough of choosing variables, choosing your data set, that type of thing. So hopefully that'll be able to help you, and we would love your comments on this as we're continuing to build and kind of fine-tune it. And then also under here is our webinars, our latest webinars. We also have another webinar next Wednesday that'll be covering the build of the site as it is now to help you along for the 5-year release. Some of those things are available, and if things aren't, please send us your questions or anything at this feedback information at cedsci.feedback@census.gov. And we can point you to things, or we could even put together some information for you for resource purposes. All right, so then I'm going to go, let me go back to this and leave it on my our information page. And then from here, Holly, I'm finished with the prepared, and I think we'd have some time to take some telephone calls if you have any.
Thank you. If you would like to ask a question, please unmute your phone, press *1, and record your name clearly when prompted so I may introduce you. Again, that is *1 if you would like to ask a question. The first question is from Ellie Irving. Your line is open.
Yes, I need assistance with researching county business patterns. I need to know the number of firms based on NAICS codes in the county which I operate.
All right, thank you. Well, it sounds like it's more of a question within the table. Is that correct? And some questions on NAICS. Is that specific? I'm wondering if it would be better to send you to somebody, one of our subject matter experts that might be able to help you.
Okay.
That seem fair? If you can, on the chat, send your information to the panelists, we'll make sure that someone circles back with you. Is that fair?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, absolutely. Thank you.
And our next question comes from Jaceel McClellan. Your line is open.
Yes, I am dumbfounded. I saw this on my email, and I listen to the web page, to your conference and everything. Am I an employee of Census, or am I getting ready to be, or is it something that they just do?
Hi. So I think I think you would need to. I think someone from the call center or something could help you. This isn't for anything to do with 2020 or employment within 2020.
Okay.
But thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.
And our next question is from Aaron Portland. Your line is open.
Yes, hi. If my question has been addressed, please just disregard. So I am able to find the county poverty data that I need for my county in Pennsylvania. However, when I'm looking at the mapping feature, it does not provide a breakdown. Is that something that is still being worked on, or is it something on my end as a user that I need to figure that out?
So it'll pull up, are you saying that you don't see the distribution of poverty throughout
Yes,
the
yes,
state?
correct. Yes. And
okay.
Yes, and within places within the county, because I wanted to see the distribution throughout the county. So I know where to get the data and how to break that down by geography. The tables I can see, but when I click on the map feature, it says no data, and it's not having a distribution. I didn't know if that was on my end, and I just need to, call back later for some more assistance, or it's a feature that's being worked on at this time.
It should work. That's probably something if you go through the panel with the chat, we should be able to get some more specifics from you and find out if there's a glitch or if we're just not understanding on our end. Does that seem fair?
Yes, so I will put my question and details in the panel that's up now in the chat box, correct?
That would be great.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And our next question is from MJ Pierce. Your line is open.
Well, I found out this isn't open for employment issues, but I have a very slow data speed, and I have been trying to apply online and having difficulty with that. Is there any alternatives?
So I'm not aware of any of those. I'm sorry, that's a different area of the Census Bureau. This is all about releasing data on a website. So I'm sorry, I can't help you with that.
Okay, thanks anyway.
You're welcome.
Our next question is from Susan Williams. Your line is open.
Oh, hello. Thank you for taking my question. I have been researching or attempting to research and grab data of businesses by county in New York State. Is that something I can find through this database?
So you should be. I'll try to muddle through. I'm not very good with the business data, but you should be able to go in and do you use a specific data? Have you ever looked at it before? Or are you new to the site?
I'm new to the site.
Okay, to census data. Okay, so going through something like maybe business and economy might be helpful. Also going through, if you know things like NAICS codes or that type of thing, you can always directly go to those codes. Like the
No, I don't know. I've just been seeing that it looks like that type of data for business owners, at least was most recently done in 2012 from everything I can see.
Right.
Is that, am I reading that correctly, or you might not know that, but it looks like some of this data may not be very current.
So we have two things. So we have an annual survey called County Business Patterns that gives data. We actually just had a release, And then we also have economic census, which is similar to our decennial 10-year census, it's every 5 years, and it's business-based. So it's counting the businesses, the information based on the businesses. And that is being released. We had preliminary data in September that was released, and we're starting our releases by state, and then those geographies, I believe it's Colorado that we're starting with in mid-January. So those are some things that you can look back at if you're, so most of the data that we have is the economic census from 2017, but that's only from the national level because of the preliminary data. But we also have that 2012 data, as what you were saying was a little bit old. It's because it's from that last census. But we do have 2017 county business patterns that's available that might give you some information.
Okay, I'll check that out. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And before we go to our next question, if you do have a question, please unmute your phone, press *1, and record your name clearly when prompted so I may introduce you. Our next question is from Cynthia. Your line is open.
Hi, I had a question around accessing like zip codes within states. So like I can touch geography, I can touch the Censusgov, but it only says all zip codes in the United States. And then the alternative is looking at the 5-digit zip code, which you can then touch the state that I want, but then you can't touch all zip codes. You just have to touch specific zip codes. So I'm just wondering if I'm making a mistake here by doing what I'm doing.
So unfortunately, you're not making a mistake. That's correct. Right now, we just have the ZICTA data for the nation. We're working on trying to get them by states, but it's a little difficult because of just the nature of the geography as ZICTAs. And so we're working on that, but you're not doing anything wrong. It's part of those collections of geographies that we're working on, and that one we don't have yet.
Is there any plans on like when that would be released, or like is there any idea of like when that would happen?
Yeah. So Ken Colwalk is here. He represents our technical side, so he can help answer this.
So the data itself is published. The problem is you would have to select each one of the ZICTAs or ZIPs individually. We're hoping that sometime in the next upcoming months before this spring that there are additional geography collections added so you don't have to continue to select each geography individually. But the data itself is published and is available.
Right. So then you would just have to find like another website that would identify the zip codes within the state, and then have to just touch each one until you get all the ones that you would need then.
And hopefully we will have that done here in the upcoming months. But yes,
okay, for the list.
We don't have that available for us.
Right.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
And our next question is from Medalia Cronalio. Your line is open.
Hi. I actually had my question already answered. I'm interested also in looking at poverty data and also doing a cross-reference with education and race. So I'm new to the website, so I think I'll just take a look at it a little bit further. And I think that previously someone had mentioned that I can actually specifically send direct questions for that if I have any questions later on.
Sure, absolutely. And a good way to start, especially since you said race, education, and maybe poverty data, those crosses, a good way to do it is to go through the faceted filters, that advanced search. So that you can get like income and poverty. You could select poverty and then the education, educational attainment, and then poverty right here. And then do a search, and it brings up the table with the cross of it. So that might be a good place to start since you're trying to look at multiple topics, is that advanced search.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And our next question is from Marion Godwin. Your line is open.
Yes, thank you for taking my question. So in the past, on the day of the release of the 5-year ACS data, we always have a big analyzing session. We have templates set up in Excel that we've been able to just take the American FactFinder data, download it, put it right into our templates. So what I'm wondering is if on the download, will that data come back in the exact form as it did with the American FactFinder data?
Okay, go ahead. Ken was about to answer that.
So currently the download feature does not download in the exact same format as American FactFinder. It is one of the features we are still working on. So I would not expect the templates to work as a one-for-one.
Yeah, when they so we select like a lot of state, county, tract, city at the same time, and then just download separate tables with all of those same geographies. Will they download this consistently different, in a different way than American FactFinder, but consistently with those same geographies selected each time?
So the table structure themselves will download consistently. However, the geographies themselves might not always come back in the same consistent order. Again, that's another feature we're hoping to address, and Kanine actually talked about this during her slide presentation. That is something we hope to address here in the next couple months.
Okay, so that's the sort order issue that's going on.
Correct.
Okay, I think that answers my question. Thank you.
Welcome.
And our next question is from Alex Hargray. Your line is open.
Yes, thank you for taking my call. This is my first webinar and also my first exposure to the data from the Census Bureau. So I wanted to say I enjoyed it, and I think you provided some very detailed information that would be helpful in looking up the census data. My question is more around the webinar itself. Presently, you show the video, but you have to do the audio through a telephone. Is there any, in future webinars, be able to pull those two together, do the video and the audio all on the same thing? That way you don't have to use two devices to listen or to see the information or hear the information?
Hi, Kanine. I can answer that. This is Greg Pewitt. I work on the WebEx portion. At this point, we definitely know that people would love to have that just come through the computers, and it is something that we've passed along to our IT department. So that is something that that we have expressed is a concern for our customers. But thanks for letting us know.
Yeah, I've done web-based training before where I have provided training to people around the world, and we've done that training through audio, video on the same thing. So I know the platform's available, so it would just make it much easier when people are listening to these. But excellent information. Thank you all very much for what you're doing.
Thanks for your feedback. We appreciate it.
And our next question is from Gene Linus. Your line is open.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. So I'm sorry if this is not an appropriate question for this webinar. I thought this was about the 2020 census, but I was wondering if you could just say anything about the response data when that will start coming out and where it's going to be. It's my understanding that the response rates will be available on a daily basis, but I haven't seen anything about how that's going to be disseminated, or if that's going to be on the data.census.gov website or through the API, or what that's going to look like.
So Greg, I don't know if you're better equipped to answer this than I am. I know that those responses will be those daily updates or every couple day updates through the API, but I'm not sure about the further tools that would be released on that, and I'm sorry about that.
Sure.
Greg, do you, I hate to throw it to you, but do you have any idea? If not, we can circle back, and if you send a message to our group panel, we'll make sure that you get the information.
Okay, I did put in the Q&A.
Okay.
And,
good.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Sure.
And again, if you would like to ask a question, please unmute your phone, press *1, and when prompted, record your first and last name clearly so I may introduce you. Our next question comes from Carolyn Gear. Your line is open.
Hi, thank you so much for taking my call and for all of your information. I'm a rather new user. I have not used data.census.gov. I've used the FactFinder, but I'm trying to find how many people live in my town for a doctoral research project who are over 65, either own or rent their own homes and drive or own a car. And I haven't been able to do that.
So we have lots of different data. What you're asking for is really, really specific. We end up having issues with disclosure with some of that stuff. I can definitely send you to our American Community Survey staff, and they can help you maybe a little bit more with it. And if not, some of that PUMS data, which you could create your own tabulation from. Although, yeah, although the PUMS data is at a higher level, you know, 100,000 or more kind of thing. So sometimes when we're looking at maybe our county or our area, yeah, we have issues with the smaller geographies and the really precise details.
Yes, yes, this geography is rather small. It's under 50,000, so yeah. I found how many over 65 live in this community, but as far as home ownership or renting, you know, living independently and, yeah, whether they are still driving or own a car or not has been difficult.
Right. But definitely if you send a message to the panel, we can get you to the right people that could help you maybe see what's available through that public use microdata file that maybe you can tabulate. Okay.
Thank you. Yes, I'm not familiar with that, so that would be helpful. Thank you so much.
And our next question comes from Rob Thomas. Your line is open.
Hi, thank you for taking my question. I'm wondering if someone could share how to access a specific location's census tract data.
Do you mean as far as like an address locator, or do you mean as going through and finding what your one of the things you could do is going through the map is to look at like tract data from that and then be able to pull up. Is that what you were talking about?
Yeah, census tracts, yes.
Right. So you can get on the site and then drill down. I'm zooming out, and then be able to drill down. And it'll start pulling up those tracks and those levels that you could be looking for. And then from there you can select. Sorry, I'm right in the middle of a state that doesn't have.
That's right.
Right in the middle of the state that I'm looking at tracks, but they're so big.
Yeah.
So if you pull in, and I don't know if you're still on the site, but you can go in and individually select select the data. the tracks from there. You can also use the selector feature right here that you can put in several. And if not, I would suggest that geolocator. You can use the one on AFF until March, but you can use the geocoder locator that we showed in the slide deck, and that should show you, based on your address, what track you're in, and then you can find the track that way.
And so then when I have the track identified, what step do I take to access that actual data?
Sure. If you go to Advanced Search, go under Geography, and there's a selection for track. You can go to California, Calaveras, and then you can go in and individually select which number it is.
Awesome.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
And then do I pick that up as a CSV, or depends on which format I'm asking for?
Correct.
That's a CSV file? Okay.
Right. Once then you can pull it up as a table. This one's just pulling up our DPO5 as a table. And so you could either download it, that track, just download the track as a CSV, or you could do an export on it. But the CSV, again, is going to be, that flat file.
That's awesome. That's exactly what I needed. Thank you.
Oh, that's great to hear. Thank you.
And our next question is from Ruth Dickinson. Your line is open. Again, Ruth Dickinson, we are not able to hear you. If you can hear us, please check your mute button or lift your handset.
Yes, here I am. You're right. My mute was still on. Thank you. I am not familiar with some of the acronyms you used, and I think that you could define them quickly. You said API, you said PUMS, and you said PUMA. What do those three stand for?
Okay, so the API is our application programming interface. It's a way of pulling data or using data for applications, and it's what our site data.census.gov is using. That's the API. A PUMA is a geographic location that was defined in order to release our PUMS data. That's the public use microdata, where it's a small, like 1% sample of kind of our questionnaire answers, basically, so that you can then take those results and then tabulate them and hopefully get some sort of idea of the characteristics of a community if it hasn't been tabulated by our own site. Sometimes people just want, the number of 15-year-olds in an area, and that's not maybe what our tabulation was. Maybe our tabulation was, 12 to 18, or something like that. So that's what the public use microdata is. Those PUMS data, and then a PUMA is a public use microdata area. So those areas are defined by the state, and they're about 100,000 people, and those are what's used when you do use those public use microdata tabulations, and you create your own tabulations. That's kind of the area that's being used, and I believe that's what you were saying. PUMS, PUMA, and API. Was there another one?
Yes. Now I have a follow-on question related to the previous caller's comment about block-level data. I'm working on the census from the perspective of the field representative who surveys, who interviews the survey respondents, and we give assurances that all of the information they provide to us is used for statistical analysis only and cannot be traced back to them individually. But some of the blocks are very small, with only a few houses on it. And if the general public is able to access block-level data, it seems like they have too personal of a connection to the people that we are interviewing.
So yes, the census is definitely a collection of all the people. There are areas that are more rural and more sparse than others. That is one of the things that we're working on with disclosure avoidance, and we are having to put additional measures in, and is to make sure that those things won't be found. So that's something that we're working on right now and will be applied to the 2020 census.
Are there only certain types of data that can be available through that level of a search?
Yes, only certain types of data. And I don't have all of the specifics, but I can, if you send your information into that chat, the all panel, I can get that information to you or send you to the man who is representing that disclosure effort.
Thank you very much, and thank you for taking my call.
Absolutely.
And our next question is from John Tubniski. Your line is open.
Hi, I have two quick questions. One is, will data.census.gov have the ability to save geography searches like what was possible in AFF? And the second question is, it might have been answered by the question on zip codes, but for the 5-year ACS, will we be able to download all census tracts in a county at one time for analysis?
So for your second one, yes. We worked on that that collection of geography, and it's available now. So you should be able to find it. The other thing is saving the search. So it's under, I believe, general questions on that ask.census.gov. And my computer wouldn't freeze. Hold on one second. Maybe it's how to use the site. Okay, how do I save my results or searches? It's on the ask.census.gov, and this gives you kind of a walkthrough using an example on how to edit the URL based on how we're putting together those the web pages. Does that make sense?
Yes, but I guess what I was using AFF before was for repeated searches of like all municipalities in the 8 counties that we cover, rather than go through each time and go, okay, I want this county, every municipality in this county, and repeating that 7 other times. So I was able to save that geographic search and use that as a... Go ahead.
So they did a deep link. Is that what it is? So what you can do, they made you deep link, but what we can do is you can just cut and paste the URL. So get your geographies in the table that you wanted, and then you can cut and paste the URL instead of making it a deep link. Does that make sense?
Well, I'll give that a try.
Yeah, absolutely. If you have issues, please send an email to us, okay?
Okay.
And our next question is from Alicia Major. Your line is open.
Yes. Are we going to be online doing census, or are we still going to do mailing? And also, would you have perks of like mileage when you go out in the field? Also, when are you coming directly into Louisiana for starting up for office?
So I'm sorry, this is about this webinar is about the dissemination on data.census.gov. I don't know the specific 2020 information. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Does that...
You're welcome. Holly, do you think we could take one more call?
Absolutely.
If we have it?
Yep. Sure. We actually have 5 more, but I'll take the next one. From Steve Doig, your line is open.
Yes, hi. I'm glad to be the last one here. Anytime I use census or data.census.gov, on the left-hand rail, I'm looking at the one that's on the screen now, I see 1,323 results. In other words, a whole bunch of different tables. It seems like the best way to find what you want is to actually know the table number and put that in. So is there an index somewhere that will show me, the description of every possible table so that I can search for particular table IDs?
So there's a link on the American Community Survey site, and they tell you what those table IDs are and what they mean and how you could find something. If you do want to go through just a regular search, you can go by topics and find something that way if you're interested. If you weren't sure which you wanted, I'm just doing health insurance, and then it pulls up a table for you. So there's different ways to do it. Sometimes people really want to drill down, and then other times people already know the table that they like, and so they typically go back and forth to that one. But we can definitely, if you can send your information, we can definitely show you where that table ID page is.
Okay. I mean, just the one you just did, you pulled up 85 tables. And, it would be, maybe one of those other ones would be the one I'd actually want, but I would have to, I guess, flip through 10 at a time to read them all. And that's why I wanted to find particular table IDs.
Yeah, you would. I mean, that's kind of, we're trying to show you the breadth of all the data that are available for health insurance. Right. You can be more specific through the advanced search if you're looking for maybe health insurance with earnings. That can help. Doing some crosses, that can help filter it down for you a little bit. You're doing health insurance, and then you did education, and you did attainment, and then did a search, and that only brings up 3 tables. So you can be more specific with it to try to get some better results. But also seeing a list of the chart of the table might help you as well. So.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Holly, if there's still people on, I hate to leave the last 5 people if there's still people on there, but if they are, we can go ahead and finish. If not, if they've already hopped off, we can wrap up.
Oh, they're still hanging on. Our next one is from Fernando Enriquez. Your line is open.
Hello. Thank you for taking my question. I am relatively new to this website. Is it possible for you to just quickly, as I watch here, show me how I would find the tables? I'm specifically looking for poverty at the county level for children 5 and under, that I would then like to further break down by school district and congressional district?
So again, this is kind of similar to that the other caller that's asking about really specific data. We end up having disclosure issues, especially when you're looking at county data and children under 5. That becomes really, really, really specific. But one of the things that you could do, you said just to get a breath to kind of know what's available, you can do poverty, and then you were looking at by county, correct?
That's
for
correct.
Children under 5, and then from there you wanted school districts, right? So it's correct. Really maybe just some school districts. If you were just looking at maybe unified school districts within Texas, we could pull up the Northside Independent School District in poverty. There we go. And search. that just gives you the percent poverty of that. And this is just a table, a subject table. It might be, there is an under 5 category that gives you the estimates, and it'll be available. But I did choose a large school district. So that might be able to help. We could definitely give you information to people in ACS that might be able to help you better, or then they can also help you if you needed to use that PUMS data to tabulate it yourself.
Okay, thank you. That was helpful. I wasn't aware that when I'm building using the filters that I could sort of toggle back and forth beyond for geography and topics, and that continues to build it up.
Right. You can do that. Just make sure you don't go up to this search because it'll clear everything out. When you're in the advanced search, just go ahead and stay in the advanced search. Yeah.
And then for congressional districts?
Congressional districts,
geography?
Geography, and then scroll down to, I think it's at the bottom, congressional districts. Gosh, I know I saw it. Hold on. You can also, it's 500. You click on this toggle, and it takes you by summary level. Congressional districts is 500, so we can scroll, at least you know what you're scrolling down. The toggle is, it's for people who just don't know.
Okay.
And from here, the congressional districts, you can choose all congressional districts, or you could do, I was doing Texas before, you can do Texas here. And then you can do 1/16th, if the 116th, and then do a search from there. And you should get the table for the poverty table for that congressional district. But then also at the back, you should also get the school district. The school district should still be there unless I X'd it out.
Okay.
But it should be, yeah, there it is. The independent school district is right there.
Wonderful. Great.
Yeah,
thank you. That was extremely helpful.
No problem.
And our next question is from Bob Leaks. Your line is open.
Hi, thanks. Following up with county business patterns like you were with another caller a while ago, some things are simple to filter for, like a NAICS code, but something like legal form of organization or employment size of establishments, if I wanted to define just partnerships, for example, it just doesn't seem to work no matter what I do. There's the filter functionality that is where you can find it, I think, once you get through customize the table.
Okay. So I'm not really sure what you mean about partnerships.
I'll show you. If you would get the table up, like go ahead and choose like NAICS code 00, for example, and proceed forward.
Right. So we can, it's probably
or just choose any NAICS code, anything, just one to make it simple. Yeah, that'd be fine.
Okay. I have one here. I just
that's not getting there. I'm sorry.
I'm looking for it. 1 second. I'm sorry. We're about to be kicked out of the room, so we're trying to.
It's table CB 1700 CBP.
Maybe we could take this offline since we're about to be kicked out of the room.
Okay.
And I think you have your information within the. Is this Mr. Weeks?
Yes, it is.
Okay, we have your information, and we'll let you know. Okay.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Holly, I think we need to wrap up. I'm so sorry.
That is not a problem at all.
Okay, hopefully we didn't miss anybody, and if we did, hopefully they can send something to the panel and we'll get their questions answered.
All right, and this concludes today's conference?
Yes, Holly, thank you. It sounds like that.
All right, this concludes today's conference. Thank you for participating. You may disconnect at this time.
Thank you.